This morning, I needed to decide what should I wear for this video. And for breakfast, I had to make a decision between toast, pancake or roti canai. Tough decision. What decision do you have to make today? Are you like some who find it very easy to make choices? Or are you like the one who agonizes over every little decisions you have to make? One thing for sure, we all have to make decisions all the time. More often than not, I make decisions going with my gut feel. However, when I faced with a major decision, I often look at data to help me decide. Is this the most reliable product as it's claimed? Is this the most suitable system for our requirement? Or is this the best location for me to invest in a house? All those are tough decisions we have to make, and I rely on data when making those decisions. This is what I've learned about decision making about 20 years ago from my working days at Shell. Let me introduce you to a method called decision analysis. What I like about this method is because it's very logical, it is process driven, and can be applied in almost all decision making situations. And most importantly, this process helps provide clarity around the nature of decision to be made. There are 4 steps in this process. The first step is clarifying the purpose of a decision, followed by establishing criteria and weightage for our decision-making process. The third step is where we evaluate the alternatives we have against the predetermined criteria. And lastly, we select the best possible alternative from our analysis. This process is best for when information around alternatives are available and quantifiable. Now I would like to dive deeper into the first 2 steps. As the famous saying by Stephen Covey goes, begin with the end in mind. The objective of this step is to help everyone involved to clearly understand what we are trying to achieve. To do so, we have to state clearly and concisely what we would like to achieve. The best practice in writing a decision-making purpose statement can be broken into 3 parts. It should contain a choice word, an output, and a variable. Allow me to show you an example. To select a CCTV system for the new manufacturing plant, select is the choice word, CCTV system is the output, and new manufacturing plant is the variable. Some examples for choice words are like pick, agree, decide, appoint, and etc. Let's now pause this video and do an exercise. Highlight the choice word, output, and variable in the 2 sentences shown. I'm sure you have answered correctly. Agree is the choice word, venue is the output, and variable are the words in the orange fonts. Did you recognize how changing the variable changes our output? The venue may differ depending on the variable stated. Alright, so we have now completed our first part of the 4 steps process. Now let's understand the second step in the process. The second step is establishing criteria and weightage. Decision criteria are yardstick we use to make decision, and this criteria can be divided into 2 categories. Prerequisite are criteria that we must have, and preference. What are preference? Preference are some wants or some desires that we have. How do we determine a prerequisite or a preference? The test is to ask 3 questions against all your criteria. Ask whether it is mandatory, measurable, and realistic. If the answer is yes to all 3 questions, it is a prerequisite. Otherwise, it is a preference. Let's take an example. The example is to agree on the venue for our 30th anniversary school reunion. Now let's test the 5 criteria against the 3 questions to determine which are prerequisites and which are preferences. As you can see, the prerequisites are the venue must be less than 90 km from the city and it must have a golf course. The other 3 criteria are preferences, as it did not have 3 yeses. Just a point to note, prerequisite must be fully met. Not meeting any prerequisite will disqualify an alternative. I hope you fully understand step 1 and step 2 now. Now let's explore step 3 and step 4 of our decision-making process. To do so, let's look at an example.
Let's try and see how decision analysis works. Step 1 is to state concisely what we would like to achieve, and the purpose sentence needs to include 1. A choice, 2. Output, and 3. A variable. What we would like to achieve is to select an attendance reporting system for the Human Resources Department. Select is the choice, attendance reporting system is the output, and Human Resources Department is the variable. The next step is to establish our criteria and respective weightages. The prerequisites are: the system must cost less than 100,000 ringgit, and the system must be provided by a local company. Both the criteria above are mandatory, measurable, and realistic. Our preferences criteria for the system is that we need to keep the cost to a minimum. The system should be able to provide accurate and real-time data. The vendor must provide good customer support and after-sales maintenance. And we would like the system to be implemented as soon as possible. And these have a weightage of 30%, 40%, 20%, and 10%, respectively. So the third step is where it gets exciting. This is where we evaluate the options we have. Let's first evaluate all the alternatives against the prerequisites. With the prerequisites, if any of the 5 alternatives in our example doesn't fill the criteria, it will be disqualified. So prerequisites must be fully met in order to even be considered. Based on the evaluation, the retina scanner and microwave tag system have prerequisite criteria they do not fulfill. This means these 2 alternatives need to be removed from our consideration. So we have 3 remaining alternatives to evaluate. Evaluation against the preference criteria is the final step before a decision will be made. We will rate the 3 alternatives we have, and the rating is multiplied with the weightage for each criteria to derive a score for each alternative. Finally, the score is summed up, and the alternative with the highest total score is what we'll recommend. And then I would ask, does this selection feel right? If not, maybe we have to reevaluate the criteria, weightage, and ratings used in this process. If it feels right, now is the time to get approval to implement the system.
We have completed the 4 steps process now. And finally, to ensure that our decisions are really robust, I would highly recommend asking everyone in the decision-making process a few validation questions like, does this selection feel right? Do we have data to back the decisions we've made? Do we have other information to suggest otherwise? By asking this question will help us ensure we did not miss any important criteria in our process. And that will help our decision-making process really robust. However, it feels right now, it's your time to get approval and to implement the decisions we've made.